You guys, welcome, welcome. 2025 is going to be an absolutely phenomenal year. We are just so excited with all the changes that are happening and with the new technology that's coming out. And we can't wait to have our special guest kind of lead us into the new year, kind of give us a state of the union, tell us how things are, where we're going in the next year. So, as you know, I'm Dr. Maureen Hayes from Galveston, Texas, and I'm joined tonight by our regulars, Jim and Ann Glenn from San Antonio, Texas. Jim's our big money man, and Ann is our beautiful nutritionist and personal trainer. And of course, we have Dr. Lee Osler from the state of Washington, dentist extraordinaire and author of several books on Redox, and of course has the Redox Matters website that we all go to watch the recordings of these various webinars. And tonight we have our founder, Tyler Norton, joining us from Utah, and he's going to take over and he's going to tell us where we are, kind of get us all excited for the new year. We're just all bursting at the seams, and we're so thankful, Tyler, for you taking time out of your busy schedule with everything that's going on to address us and share with us. So take it away.
Well, it's an absolute privilege to be with you. Thank you for inviting me to join the call this evening. And I first want to just thank everyone for a wonderful 2024. So many great things happened in 2024. And as you know, 2025 represents our 15th year at Asea. And as I start the year, I think a lot about, wow, what a journey that we've been on. And I really do want to start by just saying thanks to everybody. I've also got the chat window off to the right-hand side on my screen here. And I see all the way Danny Doyle, all the way from Hawaii, sending aloha to us. And Australia is on the line. It's lots of Texas and Michigan. And it's just joyful to be able to gather as a community. And it's so humbling for me because I'm just reflecting on the 15-year journey of what I thought was an absolute waste of my dad's energy. I thought he was crazy, as you guys know. And so it's just a joy, first off, to be with all of you. And I get kind of tired of people using trite kind of business bingo words, like game changer and this is going to be an inflection point year. But you know what? I've been reflecting all day, and I've got a big smile on my face because I've been in meetings all day today, and I'm like, you know what? 2025 is going to be a wonderful landmark year for us as a company. I used to have a gentleman I worked with that would jokingly compare and contrast how long it would take to grow asparagus versus tomatoes. And he had this concept about time to money, and that, you wanted to be in a business where you were growing tomatoes and asparagus just takes too long. I kind of think of 2025 as a bit of an asparagus year because we've been working on stuff in this garden of science and development that is gonna get exposed here, to our diamond leadership in the next week, and then that'll cascade out into the broader company. And it's just exciting for me to be able to point to that. I think that married with the backdrop, I should probably share some thought process with you guys from my dad's approach to strategy. Whenever I would talk to my dad about my prior career and what I was working on, he made me go through 4 exercises. One was, what does the playing field look like? Okay. So he would make me take time every year to step back and look at the playing field. And originally, when he said that to me, it felt pretty generic, kind of slippery to me. What does that mean? Look at the playing field. And he would say, well, I want you to look at what's happening in your market and industry, look what's happening with your competitors, and then take a hard look at yourself. And if we follow my dad's flow on strategy tonight, you step back and say, okay, you're all in the game, varying stages of experience or development. But what does the market and industry look like today? If my dad was doing strategy today, and I've shared with you guys mega trends and some of the ways that he looked at the world, but I think there's some really interesting things happening that prefigure opportunity and kind of portend some disruption or challenge in the industry that I think, if you agree that threats and opportunities can masquerade one as another, then I think we're looking at a really unique year in 2025, because as you've seen in the news, many of the even legacy companies in this industry are pivoting away from what I think is the core competency of the business, which is all of you. Some of you may have been in some of the meetings where I've run some discussions, and I've asked the group to say, okay, what are the strategic advantages of ASEA? And I'll get people peppering me with input, whether it's the product or any number of things, our home office leadership and everything else. But what's interesting to me is I actually look at it and say, you're the strategic advantage of the company. And so to see competitors that in a way are facilitating, kind of the fancy term is disintermediation. They're actually disintermediating, which is a really classic e-commerce play, but they're taking the heart and soul and the unique competitive and sustainable advantage out of their business model, in my opinion. The business model hinges and swings on a group of people like all of you that believe and that are willing to voice that belief in service of lifting others and creating opportunity. It really doesn't matter that we have in a bottle or in a tube or in a supplement of any kind. It does not matter that we have a differentiated advantage in the product if it's not coupled with the voicing of the differentiated advantage that you have. And so all of you really are the strategic advantage. And so when I look strategically or competitively at what's happening in our market and industry, remember my dad said, if you're going to do an assessment, tell me what the playing field looks like. And so he said, tell me what the market's happening in your market, what's happening in your industry. I use Perplexity AI as kind of my aggregator. I know there's tons of them out there now, but if you go to Perplexity and just start launching some prompting, and prompting, by the way, I'm convinced is becoming the new art, how to prompt AI to give you meaningful intelligence back. And what I like about Perplexity is that it actually will show me the sourcing of that information as opposed to arriving at, kind of opinion or filling in the blanks. And I started dropping in some prompts earlier today, knowing I was going to be on this call. And I asked questions like, give me an update on what's happening in revenue trending in all publicly traded MLM companies over the last 3 years through Q3 of 2024. Like, you can prompt these AI engines and they can kick back to you. In fact, I should probably even just pull it up. I wasn't planning to do this, but it's so
Hey, Ty, while
Yeah.
you're doing that,
Yeah.
we have a lot of people who are having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know if you can increase your volume. I don't want them to miss a word.
Yeah, hang on. Let me go to my make sure my mic's all the way up. Let's bear with me just 1 second so we don't. I should be good. You guys can hear me a little better? Is that a little...
You're really good.
Yeah.
You're
Okay,
really
I'll
good.
try to speak up a bit, and I've moved my laptop right close to me here. So, backing up, if you missed a little bit of this, I wanted to take you through tonight, and I realize I've got a little bit of a time window here, just how my dad would think every year, and how much I don't realize it, but my mind goes through it, and why I would suggest to you 2025, our 15th year as a company, I believe has the potential to be landmark. Number one is, my dad would tell me to say, okay, what's happening in the playing field? How versed are you and aware are you in what's happening in the market industry and with your competitors? I was just mentioning that I like to get into this particular AI engine I've been using is Perplexity. And I'm just fascinated with some of the things I can pull from it. And I can actually see if I can find this. Yeah, here we go. So some of the prompts I threw in today, what are the publicly traded revenue trends in the multi-level space? And is the industry as a whole projected to continue to grow? And then I started digging in a little higher on high growth rate companies. By the way, most of the high growth rate companies, and I'm scanning down a list of them, are much, much smaller than us. And so you can see that their percentage year over year growth off a $15 million base, it's really interesting. And then I said, what about revenue decline? and this is straight from AI, and it's all documented. Prove it down 34 million 2022 to 2023. Medifast down 31. Not surprising with all of the GLP-1 and the weight loss stuff that's hit the market. Sensi down 24%. This is 2022 to 2023. Beachbody down 25%. Princess House down 22%. It gets into some companies in Japan that probably aren't our playing field, apples to apples. Juice Plus, Mary Kay down, Plexus down, New Skin down 12%, and through the third quarter of this year, down double digits, probably projected in the third quarter quarterly report to the street, pretty significant down. What's happening? So this is the kind of stuff my dad would say, Ty, why are the big companies down? Where is the down? Why is it happening? A lot of the private equity owned MLM companies are pivoting and disintermediating themselves away from channel and moving to like an omni-channel approach. So my dad would always step back and say, okay, this is interesting. What does this mean for us as a company? Well, for me, it makes me smile. And here's why. I genuinely believe that if you turn yourself away from your core team of distribution and what it represents, you're making a colossal strategic mistake. And Jim probably would recognize this. I came from the financial industry and I saw this happen in a different setting where various types of, you could call them innovations, but transitions in the way financial entities tried to distribute their products. A lot of them academically made sense, but they dehumanized how people interacted with products and people. And so what happened was a lot of assumptions were made that academically you could sell a product without the voicing and conviction of an individual. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, there's maybe a certain percentage of that. But really, the strategic advantage of ASEA is our commitment to you and what you all represent. And I honestly believe if you took that out of, or even diminished it in some way, and still had as strong a technology stack as we have, including new technology that's forthcoming, I really think we would move into the year in a very, very disadvantaged way. So I've been really interested to see how the industry and the pendulum swings of how the industry's trying to meet their imperatives of growth, especially if they're owned by what I call institutional investment money that has high imperative demand on the business for profit and growth and meeting the thesis that they all have, versus the ones that can say, you know what, we know exactly who we are. We know where we are. We do see the movement in the marketplace, but we don't need to move in any one direction. Let's raise the flag higher. Let's megaphone out and microphone out larger and louder what it is that we represent in a time when uncertainty, industry decline, people are trying to figure out, what do I trust? You know that I've said to you guys before, I like to think of my job as to create and build a tree that you can climb. I used to climb trees as a kid, and I would, my friends and I would all get out, and we got really good at identifying at a glance, that's a great tree to climb. And then when you got into the tree, the early branches weren't a challenge. But as you got higher in the tree, you really had to know where to place your feet and balance and how to navigate the tree. And I think about my company that way because I want to create really steady branches for people to step on. So everyone knows, like, I can climb here. Some people may want to climb to a certain point and just have a seat and listen to what my dear friend Rob Ward used to say, the wind cut through the pine needles, or, that beautiful sound of just, this is where I'm at. Others want to climb all the way to the vantage point and look out and let that tree grow, keep growing so they can keep climbing. I'm indifferent on that intent, but I want to create a tree that wherever you want to climb to, you can step on a branch and be really confident that the branch won't break. And I see the industry moving to a place where I genuinely believe, like, long-standing, very capable and talented people are having to question, can I continue to climb this tree here? And can I feel really good about that? Now, it would be one thing if I was bannering that with all of you and saying we can be a trusted place for you to land and expand, and didn't really have a tech stack and a product position and really a cellular health redox position that I think is so uniquely advantaged in the marketplace. But when I say that, number one, I mean it. I think you guys have seen the punctuation of that over the years. But now I'm going to add to it additional new redox technologies that are expanding. We have catalyst redox technologies now that you're going to see here in coming days and weeks, where by catalyst, I mean we've never been able to pair our products with any kind of a catalyst that might create a differing product experience, right? That could be meaningful. And it's taken us years. What you're going to learn about next week in greater detail, those that are coming into town as special guests, you're going to see literal catalyst connections with world-class university science supporting it, right? That expand the story that we've been already telling and really give us some unique positioning opportunities in a new way. So step back again. What was my dad's approach? He would say, what does the playing field look like? What's the market? What's happening in the market? I would say right now, the broad market is kind of softening a little bit, still $180 billion global direct sales marketplace. Let's be really clear. Like, this isn't going away, right? The growth curve that's outlined, and go query these AI engines. They're really fascinating because they're sweeping from such a huge range of content. You can get a pretty good idea of the industry you're in overnight. Think about how hard it might have been to gather meaningful market intelligence before, and it's right at your fingertips tips now. So anyone who's genuinely entrepreneurial and wants to understand what market am I getting into, this is not a game here. This is a really big business. And you step into it and say, first off, is the market there and is it growing? It is. Softened a little bit on the top, but bigger companies, particularly publicly traded or institutionally funded companies, are actually compressing and looking for alternate channels to distribute to meet their growth imperatives. What does that mean for you? Sorry if this is too technical, but it really just points to opportunity. Whether you're a person that wants to be speaking to other professionals in this space, or you want to build yourself into a leader and a professional in this space, I really believe you're in a unique scenario right now. And I think it would be the absolute like pinnacle of foolishness on our part to do anything other than to run headlong into all of you and saying, at a time when everyone else is losing their ethos and identity, they're in identity crisis. Just this week, USANA purchased a baby care supplement company and signaled to their field, this is a direct to consumer play and we don't want anything to do with our MLM side of the business. Well, that's like, honestly, that's kind of like a fire alarm for people to say, wait a minute, what are you doing? And they're doing that to signal to institutional money that they've diversified because they're not meeting their growth curve. Okay. So I compare and contrast where we are as a company. I'm not going to say that we've blown out 2024, but I will tell you, we are low single digit differentials from prior year and ready to expand again. We've kind of stepped back a little bit, but nothing to be alarmed by. And we're very profitable in a healthy sense, not in a gouging sense. We got a healthy cash position, no outside institutional investors. So that's the playing field. Okay. You can see my dad would say, what's going on in your market? Who's competing with you for share of that market? And then who are you? Well, when I look at me, I say, awesome 15-year company, no outside institutional investors telling us what to do, unrivaled technology that I would have guessed easily inside of 15 years, someone would be chipping away at our market leadership position, and there's nobody, knock on all sorts of wood, right? There's really nobody out there that's got a position that looks anything like ours. Redox as a broad framework, and Dr. Osler knows this better than anyone with his books, we're talking about seriously being out in front of where the puck is going on the ice, right? The old Wayne Gretzky quote that, how do you do so well playing hockey? And he said, I skate to where the puck is going, not to where it's been. And so we're really in a unique position there. We've got an awesome field base, right, in multiple markets around the world. And we're bringing a 3 to 4 year project to the market in the next 3 weeks to 4 weeks. I mean, it'll be exposed next week, but the asparagus harvest is finally here. It's not like tomatoes. We've got something that's taken us a long time to nurture. And I just think that all points to such a confluence of incredible opportunity, depending on where you are, right? And everybody's got their own families, got their own unique individual situations. Sometimes it's pressure, it's outside pressure. I had a call from someone who was part of a large organization that I mentioned earlier. I won't name which one, and just said, you know what, I don't have a choice now. I'm coming full time into Asea and I need to cross over. There's people like that around you that are trying to figure out like which branch can I trust, which tree can I really climb, where somebody's not going to change the game. And so that first step my dad would tell me always is he would say, okay, what does your playing field look like? Now, the next phase, Dr. Hayes, he would say to me is he would say, okay, how do you feel about that? And you would go through an exercise of looking for trends and lessons learned and like what gets you excited, what keeps you up at night from a fear or threat standpoint. Regardless of your political disposition, the regulatory environment has gotten more favorable for us in the next 3 to 4 years. Let me just say that, okay? Regardless of whether you're pro or negative on what's happened, but the administration change recently will not increase our regulatory risk in the U.S. That's a big deal for us. Okay. So when I look at that's a market industry kind of environment dynamic that's external to our business that deserves attention. And if you look at it, at the money we've spent in the last 3 to 4 years trying to navigate what that could look like if it didn't look how I think it's going to look in the next 4 years, that opens up opportunity. So remember, what's the playing field look like? Okay, how do you feel about it? And that's a really good question for all of us to ask on January 3rd is how do I feel about where I sit today and what's happening? Now, you have to look at yourself and say, what does the playing field look like for me and where I'm operating and how I'm operating or where I'm working? And I think it's a healthy exercise to step back early in the year, if not at the end of last year, and say, okay, what does this mean for me? And that's that second phase my dad would sit with me with. He would say, you remember in the movie The Incredibles when, which I love that movie, I can't remember his name, it'll come to me. The villain, who's the young kid who's kind of engineered his own approach to being a superhero, says, when everybody's incredible, right, no one will be. And he was trying to make a point that says, I'm going to make everybody able to be incredible. My dad would say to me in similar fashion, what are your most critical focal points? Because if everything's critical, nothing is. And so as a company, we've been the last several months, and especially the last month, really designing in what are our critical points of focus for 2025. And I got to tell you, they point at you guys. It's all about systems. You're going to see this into next week and in coming weeks. We know we've got the product and the technology stack locked down. And in a matter of weeks, we're going to like lap any competition another 10 times. I mean, we're bringing something forward that I really think has the potential in and of itself. That one thing we're adding to I think of it as a key on the piano. We're adding like a middle C type key. It's a big deal what's coming here in the next few weeks. I know you've been told it's topical. By the way, I shouldn't do this, but this is it. I have it right here. I can't show. I promised Jerem that I wouldn't show it, but this is my little sneak peek. But I literally am holding it right here in my hand. And so you say, okay. And by the way, I'm riffing here because I'm excited. But you say, okay, what does a playing field look like? It's exciting. It's positive. What are your competitors doing? They're disavowing the heart and soul of what got them here and starting to look for other alternative ways. What does that mean for you? Does that mean a threat or an opportunity? I think there's people out there saying, I just want to climb a tree that's not going to have a branch that breaks. So I think you could start waving your hands at a lot of people that have some scar tissue from their past experience, maybe even recent, and just tell them. Now, they're not going to believe you just because you say it. They need to feel it, right? So you're going to have to find ways to expose them to what this represents. But we really see 2025 as an awesome year of opportunity. Now, I want to pause here for a minute and let you guys as kind of podcasters, if you will, ask me a question or two so I don't get off the fairway. Anything you guys want me to talk about that we've talked about so far?
I say, wow, everything you just shared. Wow.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Well, I just happened to notice that Tyler had used sort of a plural when he was talking about the technologies. So we know about one that's coming. So are you implying that there are more coming down the pike?
You're
'Cause
making me
that's
nervous now because I have to be really careful. You know what? I will say this: 2025 is centered on what's happening next week. But you guys know this. We're pretty transparent. We have research happening all around the world. So I will say to you this. How about this? Topicals are easier to move into and to get approved and to understand than ingestibles. How's that? So some of the things that we're working on point to next generation ingestibles as opposed to next generation topicals. And all I can tell you is a lot of the similar approaches we've taken down these research roads are opening up kind of opportunities, avenues where you say, the research says this, right? Is that a relevant marketplace for our field force to be able to play into? This product that you're going to get some exposure to next week and over coming weeks is so in the fairway of the age stage and key kind of market areas we want to focus on. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a great add to your story. And it serves as a kind of an exclamation mark on our prior tech. It doesn't supplant anything because it's more of a targeted approach. So you're going to be talking to people and still find plenty of use case potential with AR, Asea Redox supplement, the blue bottle, and then of course Renew 28, along with the other products. But this is going to open up another kind of even more targeted approach by virtue of the catalyst approach that we're taking. So Maureen, I would say this: 2025, this is our big reveal for sure. But do we have parallel pathing, a Gantt chart of several things happening with universities, as well as what I would call IP patent work and or kind of what I would call late stage research that's moving off of just science and into commercialization? The answer is yes.
wow.
So I really am excited. We're looking at this as a next gen kind of approach to the business. We're moving into a next gen phase. And 15 years deep, it feels really good to be able to point to continued, what I would call market leadership in supplementation of cellular health and redox signaling technologies. We pivoted into what I would call kind of adjacent or ancillary redox technologies powered by redox, cell performance, that space. All very complementary, I think, to our offering stack. But we've really been trying to get that next gen core technology redox position, and we've got it with what you're going to see here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Well, having been able to be one of the testers, I'm this is an amazing technology. I can't wait to get into people's hands. I think they're going to be blown away.
I do too. Yeah.
I'm
going to pause again. What other questions?
one of your talks that is now 5 years old, possibilities versus probabilities.
Yeah.
I love that talk. Can you give a quick synopsis of that? Because what your dad did, still to this day, I just got the chills thinking of one man. You helped identify it, that we have this. The probability is less than zero. But because of that possibilities mindset,
Right.
Yeah.
we have a game changer that's going to be going global to change lives all over the world. Can you just kind of touch on that, your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah. The practical side of people, think of my dad, who retires not too terribly far away from my current age, maybe 3-4 years from where I am now. There's this practical kind of defense mindset that says, I need to get to this place and then nest into a retirement disposition and, and kind of play out. And it's a probability mindset because probability speaks to risk. And do I think this is a risk? How much risk do I want to take? Um, and so what happens is you have this kind of arm wrestle in your heart and mind between that which is possible, right? And that which is, let's play to the probabilities. And there was some unique synapses connection in my dad's brain where when others would gravitate, and by the way, this is not a singular thing. It's been decades of watching my dad's career and his approach. where he could see that the probabilities and possibilities were intersecting in a way where others were kind of pulling those circles apart, where he was saying, oh, no, 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 no. Part of that, Jim, is my dad's thought process on the strategy approach of his playing field look like. How do I feel about this trending? How do I feel about where things are going? And he just had this really good ability to kind of play chess when others were playing checkers. He was playing in a dimensional space that was very different. And I've learned a lot from watching him do that. And it takes I think people would point to that as being a gift, and I think that's true. I actually think it's a muscle though that my dad developed over time. And he just constantly was pushing the edge of like why something isn't possible when like my mom was, and this is not uncommon I think in a marriage, but my mom was more risk averse and my dad was more like, in fact when I grew up, I had a joke with my dad. He would always look at me and say not to worry. He'd be like, Tyler, not to worry. And I would bring something up that I thought was a genuinely intelligent, like reference to risk and he'd be like, Tyler, not to worry. Like, we got this. We got this. When you start to build your confidence and conviction in your differentiated advantages, right? And he would make me do this. He would say, list out your resources, which ones can be leveraged to create advantage. List out your resources and which ones can be leveraged to create advantage every year. So I'd have a great banner year as an executive and call my dad and go, Dad, I'm at 0 on Jan 1. Like, I got to start all over. We just walked on water last year. And he would say, hey, not to worry, right? Now list out your resources and what can you leverage to create meaningful advantage. And I would start all over again and I would list it out. And he was really good at calling out near-term resources, things that you didn't have last year, which I think is really relevant in this industry because each of you that are building probably met and nurtured relationships and other leadership in the last 12 months that wasn't part of your leverageable or capitalized advantage, that you're like, I have a whole new pocket of opportunity here or in this spot over here. And of course, we're now bringing new products to the table. Excuse me, I'm not going to add plural S's to things, and you start saying, okay, how do I think differently about these unique fact-based realities, these resources that are right in front of my face? How do I intelligently leverage these to create advantage and reach my objectives? And as your mind starts to noodle on that, you start to move into where probability and possibility start to come closer together. In other words, it doesn't look like such a stretch to call this possible. It becomes almost emotionally doable. I heard once that Michael Jordan set out to score 32 points per game as a lifetime career scoring average, and like a few seasons in just couldn't get there. And all someone did to change his mindset was say, can you score 8 points a quarter? So they made it emotionally doable. They took it down to a component size that was an emotionally doable component. And all of a sudden, that which seemed highly unlikely or improbable not only became possible, but became possible and probable. It was like, no, he had a different pivot in his mind to how he approached it. So when you start to, I had a great mentor. He's a billionaire named Rob Ryan, who started Ascend Communications, the largest venture-backed merger in the history of the United States, up until I think the last year or two. Started it from scratch and sold it to Alcatel in the early 2000s, I think, for upwards of $24 billion. Rob Ryan was his name. And he would say, Tyler, the game is to create an uneven playing field. The game is to actually see where the strategic advantages are before you write out your annual objective. And my dad came from a camp that was like, write your objective and then determine your strategy. Classic Fortune 50. Rob Ryan was an entrepreneur, and he said, show me the advantage. And if I'm so far advantaged, then I can write my objective a different way because it's probable and possible, right? It was really interesting. So, as you guys look, first thing is look in the mirror and assess, how am I doing? Where am I in my life? What's driving me now? And what I love about the value proposition of ASEA is It's way more than the economics. It's impact to people, it's health. It's really a biotech company that chose a distribution model of going through you. I mean, these are biotechnologies by anyone's definition. So if someone asked you at this stage, Jim, like, and what are you guys doing? It was entirely true to say we're in the biotech space, right? We are independent distributors of some really unique biotechnologies. That's a true statement. Okay, now how do I leverage that? Well, that kind of depends on age, stage, pace, and place of every person. Each person is in a different way or place, right? But when you define what you want this to be for you, don't have an unintelligent conversation with yourself and play overly to probabilities to where you're like, well, I can't do that. I can't do what Jim and Ann do, or I'm not a doctor like Dr. Everyone has that probability trigger that's pushing you down and away from your full potential. But when you elevate that by saying, well, wait a minute, certainly that's not probable if you're starting a tech company from scratch that has to be open in 34 countries and you have to ship and have inventory available to meet demand curves in all of those countries. And you have to navigate the regulatory environment, and you have to be willing and able to pay people in multiple currencies. And you have to have a staffed customer service and associate support team that can handle 15 languages. Probability says, no, you're not going to start a biotech company in that space that looks like that. But my dad would say, list your resources and advantages. What do you have? I have the ability to grow a business into multiple markets around the world and be paid when I'm actually creating incidents of revenue in an Asian currency. I can get paid on that. I mean, you start stacking up these resources and advantages. Now it seemed like the probabilities were low, but with the fact base coming up, possibility and probability start to just merge. And it opens up a landscape where the real meaningful conversation you're having with yourself is at the frontier of the unknown, and you become friends with it. It's like instead of playing defense and playing small, you get friends with the uncertainty of that frontier and say, I'm going into it. Like, I want to play at the frontier of what's possible. That conversation, by the way, is what got my dad to start this business at age 69. If probability thinking is going to hold my father in orbit on some like risk averse disposition of retirement, he has no business doing this. But he was always at the frontier of like, what's next? Why would I stop? Why would I not want to have friends and relationships around the world? Why would we not want to bring technologies to people and children that need them and families? Those kinds of questions are at the frontier of what can feel a little scary, but I got news for you. That's where the music changes in the movie, is on that frontier. That's where it gets really good. It's like, this is the space of leaning into my potential. So I love the human element of this industry and business, where it invites people into this really unique dance and conversation with themselves about what's possible. And I think, probability speaking, whether it's your teachers at school when you were a kid telling you you're not good at math, or all these people trying to inculcate into you a set of like, well, don't do the math on that. That's not a wise decision, or that's this. Well, hold on. My dad would say, no, back up. What resources do you have? And if you said, I'm going into a war with a sticks and stones, or I'm going in with really, really high tech drone warfare, and you say, well, if I'm looking at sticks and stones, yeah, you're right. Probabilities are low. Find out where your advantages are before you let probability kill that possibility discussion. And it becomes a beautiful dance on what's possible. And that's really what underpinned the starting of this whole business.
Is that what got you to come on board with your dad? I mean, because you thought in the beginning that it was kind of silly, maybe
Yeah, I mean,
snake oily, but
yeah,
it was,
I think grand scheme of things, my risk tolerances were different than my dad. And I didn't come from this industry, so I didn't have any fact-based, premise upon which I could say this has high probability. I don't talk a lot about this, but my dad coming out of retirement to run a biotech for 4 or 5 years was pivotal. Had he not done that, he would not have had the subject matter expertise necessary to actually identify this as an opportunity.
Sure.
So that, to be fair to me and you, we look at this and say, well, that's not our wheelhouse. It's just
right.
not mine. And so it was just so foreign to me. And then add the ubiquitous nature of salt and water. like it's everywhere. Why hasn't someone figured this out if it's that unique? It was just so hard for me to get my hands around. You guys know that better than me as you go out and share it. But um, honestly, it was very, very human moments that tipped me over leaving a 20-year. And I had a really good
I know.
career. And frankly, at a young age, I could have been in Manhattan, Boston, Des Moines, one of the insurance hubs, and could have played. All the guys I worked with back then are now CEOs of very large financial institutions. A lot of friends there. I don't say that to self promote. It was just the track I was on. I was a C-suite officer by 35. And so playing into that space, I was set right there for maybe 4 or 5 more years, and I would have been playing at a high level. So I knew the trade-offs were significant if I was going to walk away from an industry I knew, including, Jim, all of my licenses, all of my SEC and FINRA licensing, everything, which took me years to get. But yeah, it was like, honestly, it was probably two things. It was the joy of working with my dad. And boy, am I glad I did. We traveled the world together. There were times we'd be in a car in Austria. We're in a Mercedes driving down the road, leaving a meeting in Austria. And he would just like hit my arm and be like, oh, who'd have thunk this, and just beautiful memories, like almost like a
Love
movie.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did it. But boy, it was a little scary, in the beginning to say, am I really going to redefine my whole career around an industry and a product that's so uniquely different than what I've done?
That's great.
Was it your belief in your dad? I mean, the vision. I mean, there are not many true visionaries. Is that the way that you saw him, and you captured part of that belief that he, even though you didn't like admitting that he was never wrong and he was always right, but right.
Yeah,
But
I
the
mean,
man is a genius. I mean, he's a Steve Jobs
he was
type.
definitely he
Better.
he was definitely ahead of where things were. And there was a guy that worked with my dad years ago that a family member bumped into and said, "Oh, wait a minute, I know your dad from a time when I was an executive at Kraft." And then he looked at this other, it was an uncle of mine, as I recall, and said, "I wonder if that guy ever knew how good he really was." My dad was good. I mean, he was just good at broad strategy. And so when others would be talking about tactical stuff, relevant to be sure, but just lower level, he was always looking out further. And yeah, I think there was a certain confidence I had in knowing that. There was also a desire to kind of continue to glean from him what I could, and the proximity was a blessing and a curse, by the way. There's no happy ending in family business sometimes. And so working with your dad could also be negative. But on the whole, it's been a great blessing for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Memories you can't
The
trade.
the future. If you could be a visualizer and visualize where we're going, I get so excited. Having done a lot of IPOs in my day, um, you can't even think of something that would be bigger than this. I mean, really, there's nothing that you could come up with that would be bigger than what what we have.
Yeah.
But getting people to see that, Tyler,
Right.
that
Yeah.
okay, you're making a little bit un poquito in the beginning, but
Yeah.
like I say, a lot of un poquitos add up to a lot. But people being able to see further out that if you stick with it, it will work.
Yeah, and I think I know enough about your background to know that there is a little bit, it's a pretty unique person. You almost have to come up through those types of environments to appreciate. We used to have these sayings, and you know them well, like, I'll live 5 years like you won't and live the rest of my life like you can't. All those trite maxims that people would say to say, like, put your time in, and then you're going to hit a tipping point where the returns are exponential. Clearly, that's the case in this industry, and but it can be hard on all of us to try to slog through those early years of trying to build it out. I think you have to have really, really clear causal motivation, around you and your family and what it is you're trying to accomplish. And I also think one of my favorite things, I've been criticized about this with the SIA, But for me, it's probably one of my favorite realities of Asea, and that is that the average age of those folks working with us is higher than maybe another company in this space. Not true of all of them, but some. And what I like about that is I think it takes some scar tissue in the real world to recognize opportunity. And I think you have to, I've just finished this Good Energy book by Dr. Casey Means. I don't know if you guys have read that. Really interesting, really fascinating, right? But here's a doctor, that's top of her class in Stanford, gets into specialization, only to find out that the whole system is broken. And then she's got to have the courage with, $500,000 of school debt to pivot back into and say, wait a minute, we're solving for the wrong thing. And so I like people that go through a little bit of life experience, because you almost have to trade the maybe for the sure thing and then go take a job with someone to really understand what opportunity is like this. And others that look at it are quick to dismiss it. I'm like, well, let's place the same degree of filtering on you taking a 9 to 5 job, crossing your fingers that the people you work for genuinely advocate and want you to win, right? And where your effort isn't necessarily always going to, compute or impute into actual economic outcomes for you. Certainly, it's not going to point you to greater freedom. Any success in a corporate setting increases your responsibility. And yeah, the economics go up, but the risk reward ratio moves with that. So, I think there's some interesting kind of traditional dry paint assumptions people make about the traditional approach to making a dollar and making a difference. And I loved the book where here's this top of her class. Everything was about her being at the top of her class. She's an accredited, published research and surgeon, and she realizes I've placed my ladder on the wrong building, and she's like, I'm not doing this right. And so in our space, if somebody is going, you've heard me say this, guys, that you can't leave a room you were never in. So, people tell me, well, I tried this out for a little while. And part of me says, no, you didn't. If you want to come in and really, really make a run at this, and don't disrespect this industry and especially ASEA by putting very modest or little effort into this and then declaring with a certain degree like of deep, like I know for sure this isn't going to work. That's not true. We're sitting on the single biggest health sciences opportunity in the world. Straight up, we're right there. Someone says, well, why isn't it bigger at this point? That's a good question. That's on me and on, to some measure, us. But it doesn't change the opportunity and the reality of what it is. And positioning yourself right, there will come the right time and circumstance where this will become mainstream. Might well be this tech that we're bringing out next week. I don't know. Most of the big companies that hit really, really high inflection points, a lot of them were just a single timing moment where the right circumstances happened. And you guys are all positioning yourselves to be right at dropping in on that wave. We're on a wave. It's certainly not flat water right now. I mean, the surf is high and we're winning, but there's going to come a time. I was in Hawaii 2 weeks ago. There's a really famous surfing tournament called the Eddy. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there's a guy named Eddie Aikau on Oahu who was just a world-renowned lifeguard and gave his life to other people. And I don't know the full story, but he perished, in a canoe kind of trek or expedition trying to save other people. And so they created this surfing tournament called the Eddy. And it started in the 80s and it's only been run 10 times. And that's because from December to March, they actually measure the surf. And if it doesn't hit a certain mark point, they won't even call the tournament. When they call it within 48 hours, and the world's top surfers have to get on a plane and get to the North Shore to participate. And here I am on the North Shore renting a house on the water, and they call the Eddy. And so people are flying in from all over. And I just became fascinated for 24 hours because I didn't dare try to navigate it because there's like thousands of people that go there, and I had grandbabies and such, but we were very, very aware that it was right there happening. And I just thought about that's such an interesting thing that once people know there's an opportunity and they call the opportunity based on a swell, that people will come from all over the world to participate in that one moment. And when we drove 3 days later past Waimea Bay, which is where this is held, the water was as flat, just small rolling waves. And so you have to see this as an opportunity to start paddling your guts out towards that wave, because, yeah, you could miss the set, and all it's going to take is a couple moments for us to drop in on a big set, and we're all going to be looking back saying, we did it. We were in the right place, right time. We paddled into that wave, and boy, what a wave we've been on. It's a great set we're on now. I'm really excited because there's no doubt in my mind there's a set coming in, and those people that are willing to see it for what it is. I've always said the business isn't on trial and Asea is not on trial. Each of us individually is on trial, and we ought to shine the mirror and get real careful with how often we perjure ourselves, because we say we're going to do something and we don't. We say we're going to build something and we don't. And so part of it's just finding that unique individual that punctuates their intentions with their actions.
Tyler,
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to make a comment here, an observation of where this seems to be anchored. Tyler is talking about the piano metaphor that we've often used, to date in the last several years about, and now that we're not segueing away from that, we're actually superimposing on it to talk about the catalyst-driven precision of being able to strike a certain note or a certain chord, a subset of the whole. And the reason why that's all true is because we're talking about not a product, we're talking about how the body works. We're talking about pathways and pathway genes. And that's why I've so much appreciated for the last several years the refining, evolving, emerging focus that we have on the science, of validating that this is not a gimmick. It's not a strike it while the iron's hot kind of thing. Why people talk about it. It's even in the quiet moments, the science still is the science. This is the way the body works, and all we're doing is marrying up a technology that marries with the way the rules of the cell operate. And that's what's so intriguing to me about all of this, is that fundamentally we started the way we started. We started with the broad piano rather than a flash in the pan type of, one thing, and then we figure out the deeper thing. We figured out the deep stuff first. Yeah. And now because of that, we can now play the single chords and the single notes and run the scales of the piano. We can do it in a way because we own the piano. Yeah. And I just think this is such an incredible advancement. I've been on the medical board like Maureen and I. We had a chance to sample ahead of time and kind of know what's coming, and it's been really hard to sew our lips closed while this was emerging. And if that's true for this, it's going to be true for the next chord. It's going to be true for the next notes that will be sounded. But I just wanted to, kind of endorse that whole concept that it's only because we've been able to play the piano, all the pathways of the body. We call that, in science speak, we call that the redoxome. Just like there's a genome, there's a redoxome or epigenome, but it's the redox sandbox. It's the landscape that we're playing on because we own that. And I know you've said that many times, Tyler, but I just wanted to compliment and make sure that nobody misses that. That's why this is happening.
I love that. You're so articulate, and I appreciate the way you said that. I've often said that conviction sells and emotions buy, and logic pays for auto ship or subscription. And sometimes you try to sell this the other way around. Sometimes we try to be logic sells, right? And logic pays for auto ship. Conviction sells, emotions buy, logic pays for subscription. That said, we have a science community that wants more logic up front. But I would tell you this, you don't have to be a scientist or a doctor to be able to have a conviction. So if that's true, and you could argue, you could arm wrestle with me, but I've got decades of leading sales organizations. And I found that the ones that were deeply convicted that what they were doing was both good and right, and came at things with a real high degree of conviction, and really had the confidence that the piano and everything that from a science and technology standpoint was behind them, which only should bolster your conviction. Each of you should become chief conviction officers. How do you increase the conviction of yourself and of the people? These calls are a great, great data point for that. If you said, you get 550 people or 30 people, or whatever the number is right now, that are on this call right now. Okay, each of you on this call should be coming away with a lift in conviction. So we have this really beautiful ability to sense truth. I think it's sensory. I think it goes far beyond intellect. When you say this is true, I'm telling you from a sincere perspective. Number one, I didn't believe this. I had to come to my own conclusions and clarity around it. But what we're bringing to bear next week, it's true. It's like truth. You can tell me the sun comes up in the west, and I can say, you're going to see your shadow tomorrow morning before you see the sun. And how many times will you need to see your shadow before you turn to watch the sunrise in the east? We are telling you something next week that is true. And Dr. Hayes and Dr. Osler know that. It's truth. So if it's true, I had a great, great mentor that said to me, he said, Ty, remember always, if it's true, you can teach it. If it's true, you can teach it. So what we're bringing forward next week is truth. To Dr. Osler's point, it's already happening in the body, right? But it's not on trial. It's true. Now, I don't know how long it takes me to watch a college football game to see commercials where I know that's not true, and that's not true, and that's not true, and that's not true. And boy, they're pouring money into marketing, right, to tell me what's truth. And next week, you're going to be armed with something that is flat out undeniably true. And it meets people at a massive reality of need. So if I can match need with truth, what's left is conviction. And when conviction is really in play, when you're to the point where it's almost you're campaigning from a place of belief, you're not selling, you're just campaigning from a place of belief. And you can't do that unless it's true, right? Because otherwise people look at you and they can smell that cheap cologne on you like, no, it's not true, or you don't know. But what we have is true. It's not on trial. What we're bringing to the marketplace is true. The science community is catching up. We know that. We're seeing that. But you should come away saying, so really what this boils down to is conviction and activity. That's all it is. It's conviction and activity. Because I'm either going to believe it but not act. And all action is preceded by faith and belief, right? So you've got to believe to act. If you can't believe enough to act, you can use faith and hope or someone else's belief to get you to a certain point. But until you go out and act, you won't know. The reason character has the word act in it is because you don't develop character without acting. You've got to learn to take steps and act. And those of you on the phone that want to but don't know how, that's where you got to plug into these calls and the people you have around you. But you'll be surprised. If you married your conviction with, as I've called for many years, refined indifference, stop trying to change anyone's eye color, right? Stop it. If they don't want it, move. Honor agency, treat people like adults. They're smart and they're intelligent. That was the other thing my dad I loved about the early years. We had people that worked in the industry would be like, Vertus, you can't talk that way to these people. And he said, he had a little more colorful language than I did. And he said, BS. He goes, I don't talk down to people. They're smart people in the room and they can understand what we're saying. And we're going to teach them strategy. We're going to teach them what we're talking about. We're going to do a mega trends presentation. And it's funny, Dad and I were invited to like this industry meeting one time. And it was, you had Blake Roney and the founders of Nu Skin, all of them billion-dollar companies. And the only small guys in the room were me and Dad. And it was because all of them respected my dad when we were only like $4 million in revenue, and they saw his background and they saw what he was doing. And we got invited. It was a political event, as I recall, at one of the founders' homes. It was huge. And I kind of looked at my dad. I go, yeah, someone in here doesn't look like the other people. And he laughed and said, you know what? They know that we're serious and they know we're legit. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this room. We were the smallest company by a mile. So, conviction sells, emotions buy. I'm not head faking people. I'm saying people can sense truth. when it's passionately communicated. That will invite people into a place of curiosity based on emotion, and they'll move into it. Logic should keep you on auto ship 6 months, period, because the product experience is not 6 days. By the way, this product, which I'm covering up, that product right there is going to change the product experience continuum. And that's going to give you a huge strategic advantage, in my opinion.
And
That's
the
wonderful.
simplicity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I feel so bad. It's 7:02 and people have families and it's a Friday night, but I'm just riffing here. There's no notes, so I'm just talking.
Well, I know you got to go, but I think it's wonderful. You had such good memories with Dad, and you know what's neat about him. He was not just a dreamer, but he was a doer. And I just hope that people will take not only the technology that we've had and the wonderful opportunity that they'll take the new product that you've barely showed, but the excitement of next week and run with it, because they can also see their own dreams come true. So hopefully people will be convicted and consistent and just get out there and share with the world. The world, like Jim always says, the world deserves to know. So thank you so much for all you've shared tonight. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Any
much.
last parting words, sir, before we see you next Thursday?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick? I have people texting me wanting to know what the name of the book was. The one by what was it, Casey Means?
Oh, Good Energy.
Yeah, good energy.
Good Energy. Great. Thank you.
I think it's a great book.
Oh.
Whoops. Yeah.
The interesting thing about her book is that it's all about redox.
It's all redox. It's all about energy.
Cell biology.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about how the metabolism, which is redox, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because she'll hit signaling, she'll hit cellular signaling and repair in there. That's why I was reading it, because someone said you ought to look for it here. But I'm reading it going, I'm telling you guys, we're sitting so far out in front of where the marketplace is. I mean, the New York Times bestseller, drop that in front of somebody you're talking to with good energy and just go, this is where it's headed. Here's a top of her class Stanford graduate who's writing a book on redox, because what is redox? It's the transfer of energy, right?
That's right.
The whole thing's about ATP and the transfer of energy, and yet she's getting all this attention, and I'm like, we have products. We're not talking in abstract here. We have legit products right now that can be brought to bear on your health and current situation that are a massive opportunity.
And the reason why is because that's the way the body works, and these signaling molecules really operate at the junction between matter and energy. This is the most upstream, deepest foundational concept of anything in the body.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I should mention this, but Dr. Naidu, when he did that piece and gave that dedication to your father, that was a pretty big deal too, as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah, because really, he wasn't in the redox. He wasn't playing in that space until Dad.
Right.
And, he connected some dots back to what he did with other things, but he understood redox, but he realized my dad was pioneering it as the premise of supplementation. I mean, redox supplementation, I remember reading, I was so furious. I wanted to go get in a fist fight with somebody because they were ripping on my dad online years ago. And they were just making fun of it as if he was making this up. And that's not a good thing for someone like me who wants to protect my dad. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to join the company, but don't act like we're making this up.
Right.
That's why you say, my parting comment is I had some awesome mentors in my life. One of them said, what could we accomplish if we took everything we know and got others to really understand it? And how far could we go? He would always say, how far can you climb and hike in the mountains you love? He would just kind of get you thinking about the hike. And he would say, and what could we accomplish if all of us took our collective knowledge and could bring that to bear in conviction so that other people could participate? And I think we should be very careful to not turn this company, never, ever give away the high ground. It's sacred ground, really, of awakening the dream of what I've always wanted to do in my life, what I've wanted to accomplish, or even just something. I mean, I love so many stories that I have of people that had never traveled outside of their small town, never had an experience of, and if ASEA can become a vehicle for the actualization of unspeakable dreams and wishes. And at the same time, people are taking health and truth out to a world that's frankly being duped into an approach to health right now. It's an amazing place to be. And none of us should ever feel like we're on trial. We don't need to be combative or bitter or argumentative. We need to be bold, declarative, and really convicted. And then let people choose.
Well, and praise God, you guys chose network marketing to give me a chance and to be able to recover my financial dignity back.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't have to do that, but you did.
Yeah, I tip
what a
my hat
gift.
to my dad. I tip
Oh,
my
yeah.
hat to my dad. He's
Yeah.
the one. You know, I don't like taking any of his credit, but I will say this: in a world where that business model is under attack and under the microscope, and make no mistake about it, that's what's being talked about right now with the advent of social media, selling platforms, influencer marketing. It's and think about all the businesses in the world that all try to disintermediate. That's a big word. It just says take the intermediate person, the middleman, out. That's disintermediation. How can I, because if I can take a middle person out, I can make the business more profitable. I can do any number of things. And yet I've seen it happen where it's the biggest mistake an organization makes, because the heart and soul of our business, you're not intermediaries for me. You are the heart and soul of the business. And so you got an industry that's disavowing and disintermediating itself. And we've got the best tech in the space. We have a good, honest company, no institutional investors. We have no debt. I have no debt. I don't have to talk to any bank about any covenants they might place on this business. We're not a startup. You've all been to the production facility. It's ready to scale. It's a really fun time to be here. And I think you've got, if strategy is differentiation, you've got a contrasting story to tell that is strategically advantaged. So go tell it with conviction. And if people don't choose in, tip your hat, give them a hug, wish them the best. You know, tell them you're there for them. If they have people they love that are struggling or going through a challenge with their health, to please check back in. But boy, just move. It really is talk, convict, move. Keep talking, because you're going to tap into somebody who sees it the way you four or six, you know, the four of you do, and the 500 people on this call, and then you're off to the races. And it's a joyful ride, but you've got to open your mouth, and you got to do it from a point of conviction and campaign from belief.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow, that's a perfect ending.
Yeah.
Tyler, thank you. That was beautiful. So, guys, I do want to bring up that Danny Doyle, I think you guys may know him. He's going to be, we're going to pass the torch to him. He's going to stay right here with us. We're going to stop this recording. Please get back to the one that brought you on this call. Ty, thank you. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of days. This will be available at redoxmatters.com in about an hour or so. Maureen, thank you as always.
See you next week.
Thank you. We love you guys.
Can't wait.
And
Bye,
Dr. Ray
you.
Dixon and Dr. Lee Osler will be your guests next Friday. The bulk of us will be with
in
Ty
Utah.
in Utah. So thank you guys. God bless.
Y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.